Yes, greetings. So tonight we will talk about the mixing setup. We will not have some screen capture from Ableton because my stems are on another computer and this computer is not connected to OBS. But yeah, tonight we will see how it is assigned on the controller. So I have zoomed in this region of the setup because this is where we will talk first and practice. Okay, and if it's long enough, perhaps I will zoom out the camera and talk about also the extended version of my mixing setup. So the dub mixing setup is here for you to understand how to assign MIDI and assign all your control. There's a lot of tutorial on Shieldrum Records YouTube, and you can see on several of them the way I use to assign. Okay, there's another video with the same theme. I don't remember the title. Perhaps is what is dub mixing? Yes, this is it. There's two video, part 1 and part 2, called What is dub mixing? And it's a kind of the same topic as tonight, but in very detailed way. And I say what I assign. And you got also dub from scratch series, which is 4 video from the first we make the redeem to the fourth one where we mix. So if you get this serie into the playlist, dub from scratch, you go until the part 3 and 4, and you will see all this is assigned. Okay? And perhaps later this year, I will come back on this. What I wanted to demonstrate tonight, it is that dub music is a live mixing process, okay? And for a long time, it has been mixed on some analog desk, which are practical because we have a knob per function. Okay. When we go into the digital domain, we can have a digital desk, but when we don't have digital desk, as here in this studio, what I use is Ableton is set up as a mixing desk. Okay, meaning I have tracks of my recordings, and those tracks are going into some buses, and then I have also some written track with some effect. So I will describe quickly this setup and make a first example of how I use it. So in the center, I have my subgroup mixer. Okay, these are some tracks which are in monitor input into Ableton. Okay, so you will find it in the input selection. So monitor input, meaning that those 4 tracks here, 1, 2, 3, 4, receive some stems from the recording. My recording is in multi-tracks. So for example, on the first, I have the bass. On the second, I have the drum. On the third, I have the rhythm, guitar and piano. And on the fourth, the voice or the melodica when it's a melody, melodica or flute or whatever. Okay? And for each of those groups which contain several sounds, I set up the sounds here. So let's play this just low, that way you will hear my voice also. I have also assigned a play head, so I have play and stop. So that way I can mix when your Ableton page is set up correctly. Normally, out of looking at the screen for the titles of your track, you don't have to look at the screen during your mix, okay? Because you have the play head here, play and stop on the second button, and rewind and forward here, okay? So let's see quickly. So on the first track on the left, I have the bass only, and on that bass, that bass track contains 2 tracks, okay? The first one is the bass, the low bass, which I set up on this knob. And the second one is the mid bass, only the mid of the bass. Okay, that way, if some of my bass needs some mids to translate well in small speaker, I will add some mid in it, okay? Also on that bass, on the same track, bass, I have set a filter. Okay, so with this filter, I can cut the low frequency of that bass, okay? So this is the description of the bass track. As you can see, when you have one or more controller, you're not obliged to use vertically. You can organize the way you want. For me, in that case, those 3 knobs were not in use in my setup. So what I did is use those knobs to feed my bus track. So on this bass bus track, I have the low bass, mid bass, and a filter, okay? And to complete this, earlier when I cut the bass, it was still there because what I said also, it's a bypass button of my filter, okay? That way I can bypass the low frequency, they are still there, but I can have this little resonance, okay? So these are just some ideas about how first for one track you could set it up, okay? So this is the few tools I find interesting on the bass. Now the second track are the drums. And as you can hear, there's several elements in that bus, okay? And this is where the right of my desk enter into the game. Here I have all the drum, and here I can remove each element of the drum. Okay, I also have 2 other switches here, which are helpful because I didn't have in-house faders. So I just set the principle, the kick, the hi-hat, the snare, and the percussions, okay? Meaning, I can decide what will happen when I will bring this fader up, okay? We can imagine something like that. We have all the drum. And in the mix, I would send that drum into the reverb and cut the drum, okay, and remove some of the elements. And when I bring it back, I don't have the kick, for example, okay? So this is why it is called a subgroup or a bus, because it will receive some other track in it. So as I said, this concept of making an audio track as an input track as a bus is described in many other videos on the channel. So next, what we have the rhythm section. So let's set this track at the beginning. Okay, and as we can hear, there's several instruments into this only track also. So I think for this track, I have just 2 channels One is for the guitar, the mute guitar. And on the other, I already grouped the piano and the organ, okay? What we could do when we have enough tracks, for example, I could have separate the organ also from the piano to have 3 tracks. But for this particular track, I wanted always to have this bubble organ whenever I bring it up. So this is another tips. These are some ideas, but for each of your track, you can simplify your work from the setting of the stems. Meaning, for example, in a track, when you know for this track you always want the organ to appear with the piano, it's better to print them together and have only one track for it, okay? But yeah, on the same concept of the drums, with several tracks inputting the bass drum, you have the same concept for the rhythm section, okay? And on this one, I have also a melodica. Usually, here I will have some horns riff, generally, but for this track, I didn't have horns riff, but I recorded 2 melodicas in it. So I set one of the melodica here. This is my lead and the 4th track, okay? And the second, I set it up here. That way I can bring it from time to time as if it was some riff. Okay, so I will continue quickly on the effects now because all the audio is done. So this technique to have only 4 basses at the end of the chain, to have 4 basses at the end of the chains, come directly from King Toby's studio and Scientist dub mixing. This is how it starts with 4 tracks. It starts even earlier with only 2 tracks. On those 2 tracks, we would have the drum and the bass on one of the tracks. And on the second one, we would have the rest of the music, for example. Or on 2 tracks, you can also do all the music on one track, and on the other track, the lead vocals. Okay? So we can imagine several combinations. Let's say it started with just 2 tracks, and then we get up to 4 tracks, and we could even mix on 8 or more tracks, but all the principle of mixing, if you get it and you understand it on those 4 basses and organization, those 4 tracks, you can expand this to have more tracks to mix, for example. But I find it very solid to mix with this setup, because also what is happening, it is that when you will bring up a bass, you can set a different, for example, imagine I need this kind of balance for my drum. The percussion behind the beat, the snare here at 0, a lot of hi-hat, and not max of the kick, okay? If I have only those 4 tracks during my mix, it will be very hard to drop them, if I want to drop them, and bring them back to the exact position of this balance, okay? So this is why it's very, very practical to have all the drums going into one fader, okay? If you don't have this possibility, the other way you can do is mixing by mute, meaning, imagine we don't have this, but we will mix by mute. And choose what will appear in the bus group, like this, okay? So mixing by mute is very great and the more stable when you set up some precise balance on an analog desk or into a MIDI setup or a digital desk. This is the shortest way, but what is happening, it is that you only have on and off. And the good thing is it will be on and off at the right level in the mix. But the not good thing is that you will have just on and off and not some in between. Okay? So I would prioritize to have the drum all on one group. Okay? And if you have only one controller, you will use the switch on the side or the switch below to mute some of the element of that group. Okay? The good thing is to have minimum 2 or a mixer and another controller with some switch. That way you can help to go further into your setup. Okay? So now let's talk about the effects. As effects, I have put 3 effects. My first effect is a filter. Okay? And I access the send to this filter is that second row. If you can see, I have one row at the bottom and a second row of switch. So when I switch on one of my bus, okay, or one of my effects, this will go into the filter, okay? This filter, if you want to find it, because you will hear it now, but if you want to find it, in December, I release a filter from Shieldrum Record, a filter made into Ableton. And this filter is emulating the kind of high-pass filter that was at King Tubby's studio. And this high-pass filter was into the analog world something called a passive filter, okay, meaning it works with no, you need no juice, no current to make it work. It works with some coils and things like that, and it's a passive unit. And this unit was able to cut frequencies, okay? But the way they route it into the King Tubby studio, I mean King Tubby and scientists, the way they route it into the studio, and I learned this from the man himself, was in parallel, okay? Meaning in Ableton, you will take a written track, you create a written track, and you will drop the step filter, the Shieldrum Record step filter on it. You can perhaps find some other emulation of those type of filter. But yeah, you can find a video, by the way, of the one I built as an Ableton rack. So for all Ableton user, I made this. And it's available for you Patreons, you already know, from I don't remember what level. And it's also available to sell on Gumroad Jideh iElements shop. So as I have no screen capture tonight, just you will have to see this other video, 10-minute video from December about this filter. So my filter, the way it is set up, this channel, this vertical channel is assigned to my filter. I set the cutoff frequency of my high-pass filter, parallel high-pass filter, on the fader, okay? So when I'm at the bottom, the filter is on off, there's no signal. And when I go up a bit, I'm around 70 Hertz and 140, 300, etc. So it goes from 70 to 7.5 Hertz, okay, or kilohertz, 7.5 kilohertz. 70 Hertz, 7.5 kilohertz in 10 steps. Okay, with this knob, something I set on the Shieldrum Records high-pass filter. On this knob, I set a tuning, which is not existent in other emulation, meaning all my steps, for all my steps, I can shift them 1 octave above or 1 octave below. So imagine with that knob, if I set it full right, my first step below will be 140 instead of being 70. If it's at the middle, my first step will be at 70. And if it's full counterclockwise, it would be first step at 35, okay? So I said this to avoid some resonance on some tracks. Sometimes I don't want it to resonate too much on some of the frequency, but the step will correspond to the harmonics contained in the drum, okay? So, for example, if I find this too high with my filter, I will tune it down with this. And I thought about 1 octave on this filter. That way we can tune it even in the key of the track if we want, or fundamental of the bass note. So the second control on my filter is the resonance of that step filter. So the resonance will act like this. As you can hear, it can be really hardcore. And the last knob for this filter is the gain output of that filter. As I keep the faders for the cutoff frequency, I needed to have a gain out, because on some case I don't need the filter to be unity gain. I want it a bit lower than the current music, excuse me, that is occurring. Okay, so this is for the filter. So let's try it. That way you will hear. I will drop the mic for 1 minute and make you hear that filter alone with no other effect. So the reason why I set a gain knob, it is because when I send this filter on the track directly, as I do in this test, I don't want too much of output from that filter, because I want to keep my balance from here. Okay, so in this case, I will play this filter with less gain. With the objective of just highlighting some frequency. So I love to call this high-pass filter a mag light, okay? Because it will make a focus on a specific frequency, as a mag light which is lighting just a specific area, okay? So we will come back on this later. So my first auxiliary in Ableton, my first written track, there is the filter. If I have a phaser effect or whatever aquatic effect or liquid effect, phaser, chorus or whatever, I would add it in serie with that filter. That way I can switch one or another. Okay? So next I have a reverb. For all the tracks, the send of that reverb, so the first send to the filter was a switch. It's written here, filter. And the second send is on the first aux here. So on all the tracks, I can send reverb, okay? So let's talk a bit about this reverb. So in this setup, it goes into a kind of spring verb. And in parallel, I have set a digital reverb. Okay, and this is when your third controller enters the game. On the controller on my left, this is like my tuning, where I will have my effects. So, for example, those two first track, even the first track, as all the tuning I have to tune this two parallel reverb with the gate on the pass and the compressor on the pass, etc. This is my own thing. As I said, is tonight is just to give you some ideas of routing about what is happening. So even if we go simple tonight, for example, on this reverb, I have set a pre-delay. So when I switch it here, I have my pre-delay, meaning my reverb will happen a bit later than the hit. So let me set it like that and bring back the track at the beginning. Okay, so the action of the pre-delay, I can switch it on or off here. It is a Ableton reverb, by the way. You can have a spring verb into the hybrid verb from Ableton. Hybrid verb, and you choose spring. In my case here, the spring is a real spring into the studio, going out and in into the computer. And the digital is the first reverb from Ableton. So the pre-delay, without pre-delay, okay, and if I set the delay of my pre-delay with this first knob, and I switch it on, so this can be useful to tune pre-delay on some track. Or for example, I set this switch into the organization of that reverb because what I wanted to do is going to no pre-delay to a specific pre-delay set in time here. So the good way was to have one, the knob to determine the pre-delay as in a hardware reverb, and two, to switch it on and off, okay, to achieve kind of things like that. Without, with, so okay, so it's a bit confused here because it's just a demonstration, but inside the track you can choose that way to trigger the same reverb delayed. What we have also, we can pan the two reverbs. So what will happen if I pan the two reverbs? This is only the digital. And only the spring. Okay, so two volume for the two reverbs, and we can pan each of those reverb, and there's some EQ. I can EQ the low frequency with those two knobs, okay? And here I have the pre-delay of the two reverb, and I have also the decay of the digital reverb. So the best way would be to add them in series. I set them in parallel. It worked great also, but if you want to extend the sound of your spring, it's better to set the spring and then the played verb after that spring in serie. Okay. So for the moment, this is an idea of configuration. 2 parallel reverb, because that way you can also trigger one or another, because the mute of my reverbs are here. And also on the digital verb from Ableton, we have a function which is called freeze. And I have set the freeze option just with a switch, just here on another switch. So I have my mute. Generally, for all my effects, I have the mute at the bottom and then some function here. Okay, so very useful. The simplest Ableton verb is very useful for dub because we can freeze the reverb and it gives us some kind of... Now, it may be a bit static like that, but imagine now some of the freeze verb or long decay verb and sending that same verb, because the tuning is here and my verb track is here, sending all this into the filter, and we will have some kind of thing like that. Okay, that's for example. So, yes, it's a good effect, only possible in the digital domain, but very great. When you will open the Ableton verb, you will see this freeze option. I guess some other reverb have this option. I know the Arturia, the digital model from Arturia has also this switch. Okay, still on that reverb, I have set a gate on that reverb, and the objective of my gate is when I need to set my reverb group shorter than what it can deliver. For example, a spring verb always have a same length, a same duration, okay? So I have set a sidechain gate. That gate is sidechained by the input of the signal, meaning when I send the drum, it will receive the signal of the drum if the drum is going to the reverb, okay? And what it will do, it will trigger the attack and release of that gate, meaning it will sculpt our reverb. So let's go without, and I will bring up the threshold, okay? So to explain, when the signal from my drum will cross a threshold, it will trigger this envelope. Of course, we are listening to the sound of the reverb. Now, there's no gate engage. So we have a very long verb. Let's try to shorten that with a gate. Attack, hold, and release of the gate are here. So this is a gate section of the reverb. Okay, this is the threshold. So at the bottom, it's always open because all the signal, even the small one, will cross the threshold. But as I bring up this threshold, it will capture only the peak of my drum, okay? So this is with the gate and without. Okay, so also that switch is cool to have some effect of switching in or out this gate on the reverb. Let's go. This is really in-depth effects section, but what I wanted to emulate here is a really complex reverb from a studio. For example, we have some hardware units, you know, some 1U or 2U hardware unit of verb, and we have a lot of parameter on them. So they are just here to set up a verb, and all of these verb will be tuned here with 2 EQ, high and low. And I set a feedback also of the verb on itself here. So this concept, you can see it explained on feedback loop video from Shieldrum Records also. You can find all those explanations, I repeat it, in some previous tutorial for how it is rooted into Ableton, okay? So let's go back onto this reverb and see what we can do with on the drum only. So, for example, if I set the threshold really up, I will have only the snare which will cross the threshold and trigger the gate. And the more I drop the threshold of the gate post verb, and the more it will open the thing. And with this gate, we can have really short verb. Here it is triggered only by the hi-hat. If I switch off the gate, so whether it is to shape your reverb or to make some special effect, this is why I set a gate post reverb. And by the way, also, greetings, Henry. By the way, also, this is very important. Past year, I released something called Verb Shaper, okay? And what I'm explaining you one more time here is all the control of the plugin I made into Ableton, the effect rack called Verb Shaper. Okay, so as always, you can have it if you subscribe as a Patreon, or you go on Gumroad/Jideh Elements. Okay, so all this concept is my verb shaper. Earlier, what I described as my filter is also Shieldrum Record step filter, variable step filter, also available. And for the echo, I still didn't release the one that I use, but I released one copy of it in a recent 15 rack easy rack. So you have the delay module into the easy rack. Not exactly the same as here, but close to, because I developed it after this one. Okay, so you see now the utility of that gate verb. And after the gate verb on this reverb module, I have trail. So a trail come from, the idea come to me from a scientist plugin, which was called G-verb for two digital verb. And he had some one verb into another and a delay module also. And here I find it interesting to add a delay post gate, and that way I can extend the length of that reverb if I want. So I have the possibility or to shorten it with the gate, or to extend it in a funny way with a delay and some time and feedback in another way. So let's listen only on the snare. So first I have a shorten gate, and then I will try to extend it with the delay. Okay, and I set this delay. It's echo, I think, from Ableton. I set it as a pan delay. That way, when I shoot some really short time, it will give me the sound and the reverb and some copy of the sound of the reverb going from left to right. Okay, so on this, I call it trail into the verb shaper. So the trail track, I have the on-off here. I can even hold that trail. Okay, so this is the hold as the freeze of the reverb. As you see, verb shaper is a really elaborated verb. Let's go. I have a bandpass filter on here. Here I set the time of this trail, and here I set the feedback of this trail. So this is a good possibility if we don't want to be the mix to be drawn in long reverb. Sometimes have shorter verb and send them into an echo. Give a more clean result. So in the idea on your setup, your verb can be a kind of space echo organization of the verb, meaning echo and reverb. But in this case, the delay is set after the reverb and not before. Okay, so this is another scientist trick. And then the last step for that reverb is a compressor, because this compressor, as a gate, is triggered by sidechain, and it will, how I can say, attenuate the reverb when there's an input coming. So this is with the compressor to the max and without. So let's open the release of the verb. Okay, this is a compressor, so we have the threshold here. As you see, the more I go down, the more it compresses. And I have attack and release of the compressor here, and the ratio. Okay, so this has some controller you don't need to have under the hand always, but if you have the button for this, you set them, because even if you don't use them a lot, when you need them, you have them under your hand right here. And so I did this, as you see, with the setting. If I go to the maximum of the compression into the verb shaper, we will hear the verb as if it is reverse verb. Most of the time, it is not used like this, but it will be used to attenuate the reverb signal when the drum hit. Okay. And the release of your compressor will decide for how many length it will compress the reverb. So if you set it very short, it will compress only on the hits that come into it. And this is a technique that lets you use some longer reverb without drowning the mix. Okay. Okay, I would call it a press compressor because we can press the attack if we want, or we can also press the tail of the reverb. I will not demonstrate it, but as you can understand, I have the ratio, the threshold attack and release. I can do any kind of action with this. Sometimes it can be great also to have some long reverb and to compress the tail of the reverb and to keep it long but not overflow the mixing. Okay, and after that reverb, what I've set is an echo. I have already 2 echo, okay. But I set the tuning of those 2 echo on the same, how can I call it? On the same range, okay? Let me explain. Into Ableton, I have return 1 is my filter, return 2 the reverb, and return 3 1 echo, and return 4 1 echo. But the way I assign the parameter of those 2 echo box, this is on the same, how can I say it? Same range, meaning if I tune this parameter, it will tune it on the echo from return 3 and return 4. And if I turn this parameter same way, it will be on the 2 of them, okay? So here I can tell to the echo box to be like, this is a kind of a groove when the echo is synced. Here I will have whole note, triplet note on the middle, and dotted note here when I'm full clockwise. The second one is the groove. Depending on this timing, I can add 33% of that timing or remove 33% of that set timing, okay? And I can send these delays, the 2 delays, into the room verb, okay? Because there's also a room verb, but the only way to reach this simple verb, just here to emulate a room, I have just 2 switches here, okay, for my drum, and for the other track, I set all those switches to be the room verb when I need it, okay? So, as I didn't need this fader for another operation, for the echo 1, this is the time value, and for the echo 2, this is the time value. Okay, so I can have them being at the same time, for example, on a note, on a fourth note or triplet grid, but have them on a different speed while it is in triplet grid, okay? So this is why I set 2 echo, to have the possibility to have 2 echo speed, or to send, for example, my drum track into 1 echo and all my melodies into the other echo, and having a different timing in each of them. Just quickly for the demonstration, I send the melodies here into the first echo. Okay, and if I send the drum into the second echo, we see we have 2 different speeds. Okay, I don't have some shortcut for the feedback of the echo because it's set as a dub delay or dub echo, meaning there's no feedback. Your feedback on your echo must be at 0% to have just one tap. And what I set Ableton to is to send back the echo output into its input. And you will tune it with your fader. As other concept, it's already described into other videos. Okay, so the more I will bring up the fader of the echo return, and the more I will have the feedback. What I can tune here for my two echoes are low, mid, high. That way I can sculpt the way it will feedback. If I accentuate the high frequency, I will have a result like this. And if I attenuate high frequency, I will have a result like this. Going to the dark. Okay, so for the setup, yes, 1 hour to explain that setup. I'm not surprised. But yeah, as you see, the goal is to simplify on one control all the tracks, and on the other side, all the way you tune your effects. Okay, so on my middle console, I have 4 tracks for the music and 4 tracks for the effects. And if I didn't need 2 echo, I would set the third one on another effect. And I have on a third controller the way to tune it. Okay, so I hope the explanation was pretty clear. I didn't detail for the echo, but for the echo, I can also reverse the phase of the echo and on-off each echo. Yeah. I didn't talk about the room verb, but there's a second verb, which role would be to make a room. With the level here. So as example here, I have this room reverb, but pre-bus. Okay, because I couldn't do otherwise. I needed my switch here to send them into the filter. So by default, they are set to pre. Okay, so sometimes it's also good to have some phantom sound in the back of your track before the track comes. Okay, that way we have one reverb post, meaning we will have no sound when there's no drum or piano, and another pre-fader. And I can extend it if I want and remove the mid frequency. And also I have a pre-delay on it. So let's hear. The room verb, and then I can switch on the big verb from time to time. Okay, I think I can send also the melodies and piano here. So here for the description and the concept of it, and now the way you can work is, as we have two echo, for example, you can have your echo on drums always open, on the echo 2, and the echo on piano and perhaps melody always open on echo 2, echo 1, excuse me. That way, when you want some echo, you can bring it up into the mix like this. Okay. What I could say, I think there's no more to say about this routing. Each row will go as a send, but you're already used to this. You're already used to this if you love to mix dub. Yes, the last thing, for example, this room verb, this little last verb I add to the setup was not vital. I mean, if I have no other switch, I would set a room verb on everything, shorter notes at a good ratio. But my idea was, okay, I have some free switch, so let's make it more elaborated. And I have those free switch here, which were not in use. And I had one row free here. Okay. My last row is used for sending some CV, some control voltage, to control an external phaser, but we will see this perhaps later. What I could do is leave you for 2 minutes with the drum and the bass of it without touching anything. And then we will make some mixing examples. Okay, so next, before mixing, I will explain you quickly the default setup I would set. Okay, so the default setup is to have everyone up. That way, when I bring a bus up, I have some signal under it. Most of the track and most all the effects, perhaps out of my filter. I can't remember if I set it. Let me check that quick. So what I wanted to say, all the tracks and the effects are all going into what I call a room verb. So this is a reverb which most of the time will be short and back in the mix. And this only reverb, which don't need to be tweaked during the mix if you don't want, is there to make every instrument appears into a same space. Okay, so this is, let's say this is a space where all of those musicians, bassist, drum, and piano are playing. And I set also the effects return, the echo return, and perhaps the filter. Let me check, I was on that. Okay. E. No, the filter don't go in it. So perhaps I can send it just a little. Okay, this is the E. So in total in Ableton, I have 6 send and returns. Okay. Okay, so I send a bit of this. Okay, that's all. So this is the only effect I don't send. This room verb is the only effect I don't send into my filter. Okay, all of the effect can go into the filter to have them switch by frequencies, but not the room verb. And the output of that filter goes also, I was trying to decide for how many, let's say -12. Yes, -12 dB into the reverb. That way, even the filter will appear to sound into the same room. And this is how you make your first space, or I can say space area of your mix. So let's try just a short mix without any other effect than this room verb and some in and out of the tracks. Perhaps a bit of moving of that filter also on the drum and the chords. So I switch on filter on drum and chords, and there's no reverb, no long reverb, just the pre-made reverb on it, the room verb, sorry. I think I can send more filter to the room verb. Let's set it to the max. So let's call this first mix level 1 mixing, meaning we only have all the instruments going into a room, okay, and we will use only the filter to add a bit of life in it, but no big verb and no echo on that mix. So this would be mix level 1. Okay. Yes. So now let's see by adding only some crash verb here and there. And we will see that the filter can be used only on the reverb or on the tracks and the reverbs also. I was saying level 1 would have been without this filter in the game, but yeah. Pretty cool. Let's say now with the big verb filter and all this going into the room verb. Mix level 2. Okay, now for mix level 3, we can add the echo into that mix. And yeah, let's go. Okay, that was for the third example. So what I could add, yes, you can think of it as a pool game, meaning when someone is coming, it can push someone else out of the mix, meaning imagine we have the piano and the bass, and we want to make come this drum into the game. We can send this piano into the echo before inputting the drums. So let's listen. And the same way we can do for the drums. Play with the EQ and then bring back the rhythm section. So yes, I'll take a minute to tell about this. You have two ways of working your effects. You can send them from the send option, or you can have them already sent at a precise ratio and bring up your effect only with the faders of the effects. Okay, so generally the reverb, it's okay to have it on a knob, meaning sometime I will trigger it from here. But even for the reverb, what I did is to add a switch with a utility rack just before the reverb. Okay, that way I can have my drum always going to the big verb. Okay, but if that switch is off, it don't go into the reverb. I just have to switch it in and off for that reverb. Okay, and that way it can give some for surprise effect, and for mixing effects more, we will tune the input of the reverb here. Okay, the idea of having two echoes is to have generally constantly the drum is going on in its own echo bus. Okay, always. If I want a small amount of echo to add some groove to the drum, I will play it like this. For example, setting the echo return back in the mix. Okay. If I drop it down to the minimum, I have no more echo. And if I bring it up, I have the longest echo I need. Okay, so there's no problem whether you are on an analog desk or MIDI desk to have your drums always going into the echo box, and you just have to have the end of the output of that echo. Okay, or the input if you want, because into the computer we can assign whatever we want. We could also assign here the send of the echo going into itself here. Okay, this is the fader out. So yes, as I was saying, for echo, for reverb, perhaps on the drum, on some part of the mix, it will be always open, and I will switch in and out here. If I don't want the whole drums into my big verb, I would do something like that. I would open only on the snare here. That way. That way I have only the snare into the reverb bus. Okay. So I think that's all. Gives you most of the possibilities. But the end result of your main mixer must be the most simple, okay? That way, when you want to mix old school and send all instruments of the bus into separated effects, you will do it from here. And if you need only a few elements going to this or that effect, you will do it from the track desk. Okay, so I think this placing a mute button at the beginning, just before your big reverb, it's a good trick. That way you can access quickly the sending of the reverb instead of launching and turning the whole knob and sometimes being out of time. So this is not all, for sure. This just some base and some ideas that came to me during my research into making Ableton being a dub mixer. And but now I think with this and the possibility of tuning your effect, your 3 or 4 effects, and the possibility of feeding your 4 main group, practicing on this type of setup can bring already a whole universe of mixing and a lot of possibilities. And I also think that there's a lot of possibilities in mixing we are not using, because as we love some artists or some dub mixer, we will most of the time try to do what they were achieving. But yeah, there's a lot of that landscape, dub landscape, that have not been explored. And there's a lot of things to do, and the way you will sound different than other, or the way you will sound like you, is first by mixing your own in real time and discovering things that never been made or things you never heard into a dub. Even if there's a lot experiment and good dub mixers, obviously there's things we never think about. Okay, so perhaps I will mix a bit this track slowly. That way you can see what is happening, and I will mix one or two other track also. So just a minute, I'll leave you a minute with just the kitty drum and the kick. Okay. As an interlude, and I come back in a minute. Okay, I'm back. So I thought about several things to say before starting to mix. First, it will not be easy to try to demonstrate or to give a particular way of mixing. There's some standard moves that occur into the dub history, and when we think about King Tubby, scientist or math professor, each of them have their moves, okay? But generally, what you will seek for is something fluid, meaning the whole mix must appear as fluid, like everything is a track, not a track with some effects popping. Okay, effects must get into the mix as cool as instrument. For example, in fact, it's very great to go back to bases, you know, to 4-track and to have those dub delay, meaning 1 or 2 delay, but in reinjection, okay, as the old school way, as I explained at the beginning of these tutorials, because this will help us to understand mixing. Let me explain. If I want to send my drums into the echo, let's send it. So I will drop the volume, that way you hear my voice also. So I can send it a little and have it going to the filter. This, for example, would be a scientist technique, sending into a delay and having the delay in the background as a groove for the drum. A very well-known track from mix by King Tubby from Jacob Miller, Baby I Love You So. It's the groove of the drum, hold everything on the delay going on the drum. You see, it's different from that to that. Okay, so what I wanted to say, the idea is when the drum is in, I can bring the echo, maintain my echo, and bring back the drum. So it's just to say you have this kind of cross-fading technique always if you want your mix to be fluid. That's why you see a lot of dub mixer will love to mix on faders. As I said, the two technique faders or mute button are great. And so, yes, what I was saying, to have those delay always open and to have it set up like that will forces you during the mix to have no possibility to have everything up, all effects and music, or you will hear nothing. So it will kind of guide your mix in the old school fashion. Okay? And what I wanted to say else before starting, yes, I think the best will be to look and to watch and rewatch what will happen now, because as I said, there's several way to manage the mix, and it will be too long or too tedious to explain. But if you watch one mix and another mix and another mix, you will catch a few, how can I tell it, a few techniques, okay? So all is about crossfade and facilitate the way you mix. If you know you always want the drum on a single echo always, you can keep it open at the right level, keep your send open at the right level, and just bring it level you want with the fader. So yeah, the good point for me about MIDI is that, for example, we can have our fader full up without restriction and be sure to be on the right level. On an analog desk, We have to be far more precise in our moves to come back at the exact same position, for example. Okay, so yeah, it make it more easy to just express and mix instead of express and mix and at the same time trying to fit the right level. It remove your stress into the mixing. Okay. And yes, I think that's all. Every button you have, if they have no assignation, try to find a trick, add an interrupter, a mute button before your reverb, for example, or add an additional mute of a track or whatever, but exploit everything. The last point I wanted to say, we don't have, as we have on analog desk, we don't have the EQ of each one, okay? And one more time, sometimes it's good to have the EQ of a single track, but one more time, going back to the roots of mixing, show us that as we don't have EQ on each track, first, our stems, all our track, we will prepare them, EQ them, compress them, make them sounding good together. And this is why we will send into this project. And the old school trick is that the parallel high-pass filter can emphasize on certain frequency, okay, and can help you to tune. It's like you have an EQ on everything. So if you want to free up the maximum of your controls and not having the EQ, just take care of prepare your stems very well, and then you will have to play only with the level of each track, and this precious parallel filter will be a kind of EQ. We will try it on several things. Know that, for example, on a bass, if we hit the first step around 70 on the bass, we have some, yes, let's go, dubwise. Sometimes this is just the time to mix. First step, off. First step, off. So as you can see, it's a kind of tuner. We can, with this filter, hit any element of the track. So let's try to go hit the snare. So you see with this parallel filter tricks from the King Tubby Studio, you can just with one knob, one fader or one knob, change the whole temperature, the whole ambience of your tracks. Some dub you will just need to tune the drum or having the filter strictly on the drum for one mix, and on the other mix just on the piano, and on the other mix switching in and out the piano or the drum. So this is the whole trick at the end. It is to know how to trigger this EQ effect or other effects on each track without overflow the mix, and build a soundscape, a reasonable soundscape, or a crazy soundscape. Let's go for the mix, dubwise. Okay, let's try something on another track. This is another high elements track called Octodub. part 2 on this one. Okay, okay. It seems I'm back online. Yes, it was a little silence. Um, let's go on another track. I will mix one or two other track before close the live session. Switch on the cam. Yes, let's go. Okay, reset everything. Let's go. Let's look for another track. One of the other rhythm made on Shieldrum Records in a past tutorial. This one is called Becked 1. Okay, that's all for tonight. We'll come back on the subject. If you have some question, don't hesitate to ask in the comment, and we'll see if we can add this topic into the next videos. Thanks.